Hi, I'm Stu from Hive Mind Automation and welcome to the Hive. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at setting up a morning briefing from Home Assistant. We'll take a look at gathering the data points that we want to get from the briefing. We'll put together the templated briefing. We'll send it to our smart speakers and take a look at a couple of ideas of how to trigger the briefing. So while I roll the intro, why don't you take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified when I release new videos each week. While you're at it, check out the affiliate links in the video description to buy smart home gadgets and support the channel at the same time. There's other ways to support the channel as well, like my Buy Me a Coffee link. Those affiliate links and the Buy Me a Coffee link are also listed on my website, hivemindautomation.com.au. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. So I was asked in a comment a while ago about creating a morning briefing so that my smart home could tell me some important things when I wake up or when I ask for it. I thought, what a great idea. I mean, what's the point of having all of this data in my smart home if I'm not putting it to good use? So here we are. The basic idea here is to build out an automation or script that gathers some useful information and then presents it in a text-to-speech manner. And in my case, I'm going to be using the Alexa Media Hacks integration to do that. I will be putting up a blog post of this process on my website when we're done as well. So I'll put the link in the video description there. And I'm also putting a write-up of my code into GitHub as well. Those links will be in the video description. Now, something to mention here is that for simplicity, I'm breaking each part of my briefing into separate scripts that focus on one part of the briefing. In programming, this sometimes gets referred to as abstraction. So in writing this video, I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole deciding what to include and trying to get some integrations working to include some additional information in the briefing took up quite a lot of time. I ended up wasting almost an entire day hyper-focusing on pulling in some news headlines to an entity in Home Assistant so that I could have them read out to me. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to get the news integration working using the RESTful sensor method, but I did find a hacks component that might be promising for that. Unfortunately, we won't get into the news in this video. At any rate, the very first thing that we need to do is decide on what data points that we want to include. Now, for me, I decided that the first thing I want to hear is what time it is. I want to hear some details about the weather. I also thought maybe it might be nice to hear an inspirational quote or something else that's a little bit of fun. And the last thing that I decided on was also to include any pending updates to my Home Assistant system here. So I'll go through those each one by one, and we'll discuss those as they come on. So we'll be taking a look at some of this in my production instance of Home Assistant. Over on the left-hand side here, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to go to Developer Tools here, and I want to go to States. And the time sensor, I'm going to filter my entities by sensor.time. And we've got our sensor.time, and the state of the time sensor is the current time. Now, there's two problems with this. Firstly, the sensor.time entity is usually in 24-hour time. While I don't have a problem with 24-hour time, it sounds a little bit weird when being read out, especially by a text-to-speech engine. Now, at the end of the day, this is really personal preference. But the second problem is that rather than just launch into its 903, I figure a briefing should maybe have a time of day appropriate greeting like good morning or good afternoon. So let's take a look at the Ginger template that I came up with to announce a time appropriate greeting, convert 24-hour time to 12-hour time, and announce it along with AM or PM. So I'm going to go over to settings, I'm going to go to automations and Cs, and I'm going to go to scripts. And we've got announce time here. So we'll take a look at some of the others shortly, but I'll go into announce time. And now that we're inside announce time, there's nothing there. What's the deal? I might just change the icon here. Uh, we'll make that a digital clock, sure. But there's nothing here. And that's because we need to click on the three dot stack at the top right corner, and we're going to edit in YAML. And we see here we've got the details of my script. So we're using announce time is the alias. Our service is notify.alexamedia. That's the service that we're calling for our text to speech. And we've got our target here is the Dining Room Echo Plus, which is right behind me here. And we've got our message here. Now it's looking a little bit messy. So what I'll do is I'm going to just paste this in here like so to tidy up the formatting so that we can go through it a little bit better, and this will work just fine. I'll just remove that there. Okay, so now that we've pasted that better formatted version of the script in, we can take a look at our message block here and the Ginger template here. So the first things that we're doing here is we are getting the current time from our center.time center state. We just want the state. We don't need any attributes, so we can just grab states and then center.time in here. And then in order to convert it into 12-hour time, I need to extract the hour and the minute. So we're going current time, and we're splitting that on the colon that's between the hour and the minute in the format of the sensor. And we're looking at the first or the 0th item in the array that gets created by this split function here. And for the minute, we're getting the next item in that array that gets created by the split function, which is going to be the minutes. And then we've got this if block here. So what we're doing is if the hour is greater than 6 and less than 12, we're going to say good morning. If the hour is greater than 12 and less than 18, then it's going to say good afternoon. So this is between 6 a.m. and midday. This is between midday and 6 p.m. And then if it's between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., we're going to say good evening. So if it's greater than or equal to 18, or it's less than 6. So we're setting the suffix to AM if it's less than 12, otherwise we're setting it to PM. And then we're setting 12-hour time. If the hour is less than or equal to 12, we're just setting it to hour. Or if it's more than 12, we're setting it to the hour minus 12. So that's where we're converting into 12-hour time. And then the script will say it's currently, and then the hour and the minute, and then the suffix. So if it's 8:15 a.m., this suffix is going to choose AM. The hour isn't going to do anything. It's just going to be 8. And the minute we're picking up over here. So it's going to say it's currently 8:15 a.m. So we can save that script, and what we can do is we can run that script.
Good morning. It's currently 9:09 a.m.
And so it said, good morning, it's currently 9:09 a.m. Now, obviously, if it were after 6, it would say good evening. And if it were in the afternoon, it would say good afternoon. So that time worked out pretty nicely. Next up, I want an announcement with some weather details, and this is where things start to get a little bit complicated. So we'll take a look at the script and I'll try to explain it as we go through it. So I'll go into the announce weather details script here, and I'll change this icon to MDI weather. We'll go weather sunny alert. That's good. I'll save that, and I'm going to go into YAML mode again. Now, again, the formatting here isn't great, so I'm going to head over to my Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to grab the better version of this. Okay, so again, if we look at our script here, we've got the alias is announced, weather details, the service is notified.alexa media, and the target is our dining room Echo Plus. And the message here is the Ginger template. I'll just tidy that up a little bit there. And as you can see, if I scroll, there's a lot happening here because I wanted to make it a little bit more nuanced here with the way it reads this out. So it starts with getting the current temp, and that goes to the weather.home, and it grabs the state attribute from weather.home and the attribute temperature from there. And this section here just makes sure that that's a floating point number, so it has a decimal place in there. And then the current condition here in the weather.home sensor, the weather.home sensor's state is going to be the current condition, and that can be things like sunny, partly cloudy, etc. And something I noticed with the partly cloudy state is that it just does it as one word, and that read out a little bit strangely. And so what I've got here is an if statement that if it is just this partly cloudy as one word, it then changes the current condition to partly cloudy as two words. So then what it does is it says outside, it's the current condition. So in this case, it could be partly cloudy. And it will then read out the current temperature. And it says degrees Celsius. Now, what I have learnt here is that I can change that to this here, paste that there. So we can just put degrees C there and it will read that out correctly, which is quite nice. And then I wanted to get some forecast information, and that started to get a little bit more difficult. Now, inside the weather.home attribute, and I'm just using the default weather integration that will be set up on pretty much every Home Assistant instance straight out of the box. You may need to modify this script for your own uses if you're using a different weather integration. But inside the attributes of the weather.home, there is an array of forecast data. An array is just a list of different items. And then inside that list of different items are some additional attributes. So that forecast is normally, it has a number of hours available to it. So, you know, it'll have 3 or 4 different hours in that forecast array. So then what I'm doing is I'm instantiating a couple of variables. I want a high temp and a low temp variable here. And to instantiate them, by instantiate, I mean, I'm creating the variable with a kind of initial value. And so what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the temperature from the first item or the 0th item in the array for both the high temp and low temp. So we're looking at dot temperature and dot temp low inside the array item for weather here. So we're putting that weather forecast data into an array here that's called weather. And then what we're doing here is we're iterating through this array. So for each entry in this weather array, if the temperature for that is greater than the high temp that we set here, then we're going to reset that high temp to the temperature that we've detected in this part of the forecast. And if the low temperature in that period of time is lower than the low temp that we picked up in this first part here, then it's going to reset that low temp to the low temp for this entry in the forecast array. And the other thing it's looking for is if the condition for that part of the forecast says that it's rainy, it's going to announce it looks like there's rain expected at around, and then it extracts the time from that forecast entry, and then it says o'clock, and it says then that you might want to take an umbrella if you're leaving the house. So the actual announcement at this point is then going to be outside it is say partly cloudy and 14 degrees, and then if there's going to be rain, say at 2 o'clock, it'll say it looks like there's rain expected around 2 o'clock. You might want to take an umbrella if you're leaving the house. But it's also now created these high and low temperature variables for us. And then it's going to run through this if block here. And it's going to look at if the high temperature is greater than 30 degrees, it's going to be a hot one. If it's going to be between 20 and 30, it should be warm. If it's going to be between 15 and 20, it's going to be pretty mild. If it's going to be between 10 and 15, it's going to be a bit chilly. If it's going to be between 0 and 10, it's going to be a cold day. And if it's going to be less than 0, so bear in mind that that's the only possible condition left here. So that's why it's just an else. It's going to be freezing today is what it will say. And then the forecast high is, and it'll read out that high temp variable that we got up here. And then it'll say with a low of, and again, it's going to read out the low temp variable that we got up here. And then it's going to iterate through this if statement here on the low temp. So similar to what we had with the high temp, it's basically just going to make a qualitative statement about what the low temp is going to be. So we've got a high temp and a low temp qualitative statement here. So if the low temp is going to be above 30 degrees Celsius, wow, that's hot. If it's going to be between 20 and 30, it'll say it's not going to go below 20 degrees today. If it's going to be between 10 and 20, it might get a little bit chilly. And if it's between 0 and 10, it'll say that's cold. And if it's less than 0, so again, we see that that is the last possible value that we can have is less than 0. So it's just an else statement. It's going to say absolutely freezing. What we should get when I click on the 3-dot stack and run this script.
Outside, it's raining at 9.0 degrees Celsius. It looks like there's rain expected at around 02 o'clock. You might want to take an umbrella if you're leaving the house. It's going to be a pretty mild temperature today. The forecast high is 16.9 degrees Celsius, with a low of 7.8 degrees Celsius. That's cold.
So we got our temperature details from the weather, and that is how that script runs. Now there's more to the weather details that I want here, and we'll take a look. And it looks like I've actually forgotten to create that script. So we'll get to create that together. So I'm going to click on add script and I'm going to put in here announce wind details. And the way I'm creating these scripts, we'll go MDI and wind. Yeah, wind power, that'll do nicely. Announce wind details, and I'm just going to add an action, and the action is call service. And we're going to go Alexa media, and it's actually, yeah, so it's notify Alexa media. And what we could do is put our template in here, but as soon as I add any kind of ginger data in here, so if I paste in some template data, it's going to tell me that the visual editor is not supported, and we can edit the config in YAML. So what I'm going to do is just pop over straight to the YAML editor to fix this up. So I'm going to fix up that formatting because it bothers me when it doesn't look right. And so we'll go through the template here. To start off with, we are getting the wind bearing into a variable here by grabbing it from state attributes, weather.home and the attribute of wind bearing. And we're getting the wind speed from state attributes weather.home and wind underscore speed. We're getting both of those as floating values. And the next thing that I'm doing here is actually a little bit complicated. So I'll paste this in, and this is an array of cardinal directions and the degree values for them. So let me get this formatting right. There we go. So what we're setting here is a dictionary array. So what we have here is we've got 0 to 11.25 degrees is going to translate to north. 11.25 to 33.7 is north-northeast. Then we've got northeast, east-northeast, east, east-southeast, southeast, south-southeast, etc. We've got all of the cardinal directions. Now, this is needlessly complicated. You could actually take out these in-between cardinal directions that I've highlighted here on screen and just go with north, northwest, west, southwest, south, southeast, east, northeast, and north. But I wanted a little bit more nuance to my announcement. And we'll get to how it handles that in just a moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a qualitative statement about the wind speed. So now that's gone blue, that's good. So what's going to happen here is we've got our wind speed up here. And if the wind speed is greater than 50, it's going to say it's very windy outside. If it's between 40 and 50, it'll say it's pretty windy at the moment. Between 30 and 40, there's a strong breeze. Between 20 and 30, it's a bit breezy outside. Between 10 and 20, there's a light breeze. And if it's less than 10, which is the only other option, it'll say it's quite still. So that's actually the first time where we say anything about the wind during the script here. So it's just saying a qualitative statement about the wind speed. And then we need to grab this statement here. And I'm going to try and get that formatting correct. There we go. Okay. Now, so what this is going to do is for the range and the direction in the directions items. So for the range and the direction inside this array of dictionaries, if the wind bearing is greater than or equal to the first item in the range and less than the second item in the range, we're going to say the wind is currently blowing from the direction, which is that item there in that range. And then we're going to say at the wind speed variable here and kilometers per hour. That's the unit of measurement for my wind speed. I can actually just put a carriage return in there to bring that so that we don't have to scroll left and right. So this is going to iterate through here and it's going to compare this wind bearing and see whether it is greater than the first number in here or and less than this second number here. So it needs to be between these two numbers to be considered north, north, northeast, etc. So if it's not there, it won't say anything. If it's not there, it won't say anything. But if it's in there, it'll say the wind is currently blowing from the northeast at the speed per hour. That is the script for the wind details. So if I click on that there and I will save the script first. So if I click that there and we run the script, we should actually get an output here. So we'll get a qualitative statement about the wind and then the direction it's blowing from and what speed it's blowing at. So we'll run the script and it is not working. Okay, so I forgot to put in my target there, which is the media underscore player dot dining room echo plus in my case. Without that target inside the data section of our service call, we're going to have a bad time. But we've got our script sorted out. And if I now click the three dot stack and click run script.
It's quite still. The wind is currently blowing from the east-northeast direction at 6.1 kilometers per hour.
So we got our qualitative statement about the wind speed and then the direction and the speed that that wind is coming from. So as you can see, there's a bit to do in both the temperature and the wind announcements there, but they worked pretty well once we got the kinks worked out. Now, after announcing some weather details, I want to know some of the details about some of the inside temperatures, and this one is pretty simple. I'll go into announce inside temperatures, And again, I'll just put a temperature. We'll make that temperature Celsius, and we'll keep that as announce inside temperatures. I'm just changing the icon just to make it look a bit prettier. And I'll go to edit in YAML. Now, again, the formatting here has gotten a wee bit messy. I'm just going to go, and that should make it a little bit easier to read. So we've got inside it's currently, and we'll grab the dining room temperature sensor state. So inside it's currently whatever this value is, degrees C in the dining room. And we'll grab the lounge room temperature sensor details and say it's that temperature in the lounge. And we'll grab the office temperature and the master bedroom temperature. So really, really simple. What I could have done here is make it a little bit more complicated and used an array, created an array here and iterated through that array. That would be a better option if you wanted to then make it easy to add or remove things from this part of the announcement. With the changes that I made just to the formatting, I'll save those and I'll just run this script. It should be pretty straightforward.
Inside it's currently 20.7 degrees Celsius in the dining room, 20 degrees Celsius in the lounge, 19.7 degrees Celsius in the office, and 16.8 degrees Celsius in the master bedroom.
So that was a really easy one to do. We're not doing any kind of qualitative statements there. So I don't need any kind of big if statements to iterate through. And we're not doing any loops, but we could do a loop over an array, as I say, just to make this a little bit more efficient and easier to work with down the line. So now I wanted to have a little bit of fun with the daily briefing as well. And this is where I started to go down a bit of a rabbit hole, and I settled on 3 data points that I wanted to add in. I wanted to grab a random quote, I wanted a random dad joke, and I wanted a random fact. Now, I'll do a separate video about how I went about getting these entities into Home Assistant, but the basic concept is that I created a RESTful sensor, which creates a sensor with the result of a REST API query. I then found free APIs for all 3 of those data points at API Ninjas, and I'll put a link in the description for them. And the scripts for these are pretty straightforward again, though the quote script adds a tiny bit more complexity because we have 3 data points for the one sensor in Home Assistant. Let's take a quick look at these sensors though. I'll go to our developer tools and I want to go sensor.quote. So what we have here is we've got our sensor, quote sensor, and we've got our quote is in the state, and we've got our author is an attribute there, and we've got a category as well. So these are the 3 data points that I mentioned before. We've also got a sensor for so we've got dad joke of the hour, and that is actually because this sensor will refresh every hour. We've got the joke is in the state there, and we've just got a friendly name and attribute. So we don't actually need to worry about anything with this one other than grabbing the state. And the last one that we'll look at is the random fact. So we've got our random fact, and we've got that again, like with the dad joke, it's just in the state of the sensor there. So I'll head back to settings and we'll go to our automations and scenes and into scripts. And we'll take a look at our dad joke. We've got a party popper icon and we'll edit that in YAML. And this one is really easy. So the script around that, we've got all of the standard stuff to do the announcement on the Echo Plus behind me. And the message that we're saying is just here is a dad joke. And we've got 2 full stops in here. And that is just so that there's a little bit of a pause between saying here is a dad joke and then reading out that dad joke. So if I run this script.
Here is a dad joke. Just look at that couple down the road, a wife told her husband. He keeps holding her hand, kissing her, holding the door for her. Why can't you do that? Are you insane? He responded. I barely know the woman.
So that was kind of a decent example of a dad joke for sure. If we pop back out though, we'll go and we'll find the quote of the day, and we'll edit that in YAML. We'll just fix up some of this formatting here. I'm gonna do this. So we'll fix up this formatting and just take a look here. So what we're looking at is we want the category of the quote. So the category quote of the day is by author, and then it's going to say they said, and then it's going to read out our quote. And with the new formatting, I can take that away. So I'm going to save the script, the changes there. Again, it's really just wrapped inside that standard stuff to read on the Dining Room Echo Plus, and we'll run the script.
The love quote of the day is by Marcus Aurelius. They said, accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart.
And so we got our quote, our love quote from Marcus Aurelius, and they said the quote. Lastly, we go to our random fact. Let's give this one an exclamation mark. We'll save that, and we'll just go to our edit in YAML. And again, this one's just like the dad joke. It's really, really basic. We've got our standard wrapper for reading it out on our Dining Room Echo Plus, and it just says, and a random fact. And then again, we've got the 2 full stops to give a bit of a delay between saying, and a random fact, and then reading out the random fact. So we'll run the script.
And a random fact. In August 1999, Lori Lynn Lumley set a record by spinning 82 hula hoops at the same time for 3 full revolutions.
There you go. Interesting. Now, before we get into the last couple, as I mentioned earlier, I did want to try and include some news headlines here using the RESTful sensor as well. But I wasted several hours trying to make the sensor work without a result, so I eventually gave up. I might revisit the news headlines piece in a future video, but for now I'm mostly happy with what I've got so far. So the last thing that I want to hear about in my briefing though is if there's any pending updates for Home Assistant Core, Home Assistant OS, or ESP Home, because those are the 3 most commonly updated components in my smart home at least, and the rest I tend to just check manually. So let's take a look at a templated script to announce pending updates. We'll open that up and we've got our icon update and just says announce pending updates. I'll go into edit in YAML mode, and the formatting is a bit funky here, so I'll just try and tidy up that formatting. Okay, so I've fixed up that formatting, so it should be a little bit easier to read now. I'll just save that. So what we've got, again, standard wrapper for reading on the Echo Plus here in the dining room. And we're just going through, there's 3 distinct sections here. And what I could have done here, and I will probably look at doing in the future, is actually turning this into a for loop over an array, simply because the announcement is basically the same for all 3. So what we're looking at first is whether the state of update.home assistant operating system update is on. And if it is, it's going to say there's a Home Assistant OS update pending. It'll say what the installed version is by looking at the update installed version state attribute, and what the available version is by looking at the state attribute for the latest version from that same entity. So we're actually just looking at the same entity in each case here. And just extracting out the installed version attribute and the latest version attribute, and wrapping that inside an if statement, and only looking at this if the state of this entity is on. So if it's off, it won't say anything. So if there's no updates pending, we're not going to get told about it. And we're doing the same for the Home Assistant Core Update entity, and then the same for the ESP Home Update entity. So this one again is pretty simple, but it could be better if I just click on the three dot stack and hit Run Script.
There's a Home Assistant OS update pending. The installed version is 10.1. The available version is 10.2.
And so I deliberately left that 10.2 update off my production server here, just so that we could demonstrate that requirement, and that we are able to run this script and get a result out of it. Now, it's probably worth mentioning that I could handle this better by creating an array of values like we did with the cardinal directions for the wind, and then iterating through the array to read out the data. That would also have the benefit of being easy to add or remove values from the template in a single place instead of multiple. And it's also worth mentioning that we could do this for the inside temperatures as well, which I mentioned when we were looking at that script too. So that's pretty much it, but it would seem a little bit odd if we were to just kind of run the announcement and then it just ends on there's updates available. So what I decided to do in automations and scenes and then script is just create this announce end of briefing, and it's actually not even a templated announcement. It's just a simple announcement, but you could reasonably add more templated data in here if you wanted to, and we don't even need to take a look at this in YAML mode. We're literally just sending an Alexa Media notification to say that's all I've got right now, and our target is our Media Player Dining Room Echo Plus. This is how pretty much any announcements would look in UI mode until you start adding templating. So as soon as I put in a double open curly brace there, it bounces me out and says templates are not supported in the visual editor. So we can see how this looks in YAML mode. It's notify Alexa Media, so standard wrappers here, and then that's all I've got right now. So what I can do is we'll run that script, and
That's all I've got right now.
so that is that. So we've created a bunch of scripts, and I want to get them to run in the correct order. Now, I also want a button to be able to trigger this automation. So I'm going to head over to settings and devices and services, and then helpers. And you'll see that I've got daily briefing as an input button here. And this is one that I created earlier. It's just create helper button, and I called it daily briefing, and I gave it an icon of newspaper there. And then I hit create. And all that is going to do is, if I take a look at that, it just creates this daily briefing button, and we can press that button. But then I want to create an automation. So if I click on automations and scenes here, and let's find I have a daily briefing automation here. And if I click on that, so here in our automation, our trigger is whenever daily briefing, that input button daily briefing changes. So we press the button. We're going to then run through the actions. We're going to announce the time, the weather details, the inside temperatures, the quote of the day, the dad joke, the random fact, the pending updates, and then the end of the briefing. I'm going to also add call service, and I'm going to go script dot announce inside temperatures isn't what I want. I want wind details. I'm going to save that. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to reorder, and I'm going to drag the wind details up to. So we've got our daily briefing, and it's just when that input button state changes, all we're going to do is run through the script. So announce the time, weather details, wind details, inside temperatures, quote of the day, dad joke, random fact, pending updates, and then announce the end of the briefing. So what we can do there is if I go to everything here and I'll search for daily briefing, we've got our input button, and I could just press this. What I have done, however, to make it a little bit more convenient, is I've put a daily briefing onto my wall controller here. So let's just scroll through here, and we've got this daily briefing button. So I can press that and it's going to read out my daily briefing. Or if I wanted to, I could add other triggers to the automation, like maybe using a Zigbee button to trigger that automation, which could be kind of interesting as well. Or trigger at a specific time. The list of ways that you can trigger this is quite long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger the daily briefing. I've got a mic over next to the Echo Plus now, so you should be able to hear this a little bit more clearly, and hopefully I am not going to clip that mic. So I'll click the button and we should get our daily briefing now.
Good morning. It's currently 10:02 a.m. Outside, it's rainy and 9.3 degrees Celsius. It looks like there's rain expected at around 02 o'clock. You might want to take an umbrella if you're leaving the house. It's going to be a pretty mild temperature today. The forecast high is 16.9 degrees Celsius, with a low of 7.8 degrees Celsius. That's cold. It's quite still. The wind is currently blowing from the east-northeast direction at 7.6 kilometers per hour. Inside it's currently 20.5 degrees Celsius in the dining room, 22 degrees Celsius in the lounge, 19.9 degrees Celsius in the office, and 16.9 degrees Celsius in the master bedroom. The love quote of the day is by Marcus Aurelius. They said, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." Here is a dad joke. Just look at that couple down the road, a wife told her husband. He keeps holding her hand, kissing her, holding the door for her. "Why can't you do that? Are you insane?" He responded, "I barely know the woman." And a random fact. In August 1999, Lori Lynn Lomeley set a record by spinning 82 hula hoops at the same time for 3 full revolutions. There's a Home Assistant OS update pending. The installed version is 10.1. The available version is 10.2. That's all I've got right now.
So that's how I've set up a daily briefing from Home Assistant. Now, this is very much a choose your own adventure situation, so your daily briefing probably won't look anything like mine once you get through customizing the briefing for your purposes. I've had a lot of fun setting up this briefing, and I've added the button to my production instance of Home Assistant here on the dashboard behind me, so I can trigger it whenever I like. Now, it's worth mentioning that I did have some trouble with getting the briefing to play in more than one room at a time, so I do need to wrap my head around that problem at some point. But for now, just playing it here in the dining room works perfectly fine for my needs. I think this might be a limitation of the Alexa Media Hacks integration that I'm using for the text-to-speech, so I do need to test this out with the mediaplayer.cloud Say service. Let me know what you include in your daily briefing in the comments section down below. That's all we have for this video, and I do hope that it helped you in your home automation journey. Be sure to drop a comment down below with home automation ideas you'd like to see me cover in a future video. Don't forget to follow HiveMind Automation on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button down below to give it a like. If you're not already subscribed, please consider changing that now by hitting the subscribe button. And while you're at it, if you hit the bell icon, you'll get a notification when I release new videos, and that's normally every week. Lastly, if you like what I'm doing here and you want to support the channel, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Any contributions that you make through Buy Me a Coffee get put towards making more and hopefully better content for you to enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.
Bye for now.